just to answer the question that you were asking before the break, what is Donald Trump doing here? I think Donald Trump yesterday here dramatically overplayed his hand. If you go to Truth Social, where he published that message yesterday, shamefully and disgracefully sullying his own office by expressing the very hostile sentiments that he expressed to both Rob Reiner and his wife Michele Singer Reiner, look at the responses and you will discover that a substantial number of Donald Trump's followers from his Make America Great Again movement urged him to delete that message, said to him that it was inappropriate. We saw yesterday here not a single Republican lawmaker up on Capitol Hill willing to back what he was saying. The only person I could find yesterday who was going to bat for that disgraceful message was the far-right influencer Laura Loomer, who herself is no stranger to inflammatory, irresponsible messaging. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, walked away from reporters when they questioned him about it. He didn't even do what he normally does, which is to say, oh, I didn't read it, the president's got a sense of humour. We didn't hear any of that. I think this was of a much bigger magnitude than, for instance, the shameful comments that he made several years ago about Serge Kovaleski, the New York Times reporter who is disabled, because Rob Reiner and his wife had a huge constituency of followers among the Democratic Party faithful, but they also had enormous fans outside the Democratic Party's base. You know, who doesn't love When Harry Met Sally or This Is Spinal Tap or all the other great films that Rob Reiner directed? It's also important to talk about his wife, Michele Singer Reiner, for a couple of different reasons. First of all, before she married Rob Reiner, she was a photographer. And she happens to have been the photographer who took the famous cover picture of Donald Trump that appears on the Art of the Deal. Now, whether Donald Trump remembered that yesterday before he put that shocking message out or not is unclear. But not only did they have that personal history, but after she married Rob Reiner just last year, she was one of the co-producers of a documentary called God and Country. And it really stuck in the craw of the Christian nationalists that documentary exposed and investigated, that absolutely lie at the heart of Trump's second term. That documentary, if you go and watch it, and if you haven't seen it, it is well worth a view. God and Country. You can find it streaming on one of the streaming services somewhere. That lifted the lid on the Christian national movement and said to Americans, these people are going to take the country down exactly the path that Donald Trump, J.D. Vance and all of the sycophants within the administration have taken America down since Inauguration Day back in January. So there was definitely personal animus towards her and to Rob Reiner, who also worked on that project and, of course, raised millions of dollars for political candidates, including Kamala Harris, before her former president, Barack Obama, and was an acolyte, you know, a hero of the Democratic Party and progressive causes. But I think he overplayed his hand yesterday, even with his own support base.
And I swore off this question probably 6 or 7 months ago, and now you've made me ask you again. Is it likely to change anything, the support base notwithstanding, or will we back to business as usual in a week?
I mean, we may be back to business as usual in a week. There were many Trump supporters, I mean, they claimed to be Trump's voters, who were saying on social media yesterday, Mr. President, I voted for you 3 times, but I am deeply, deeply disappointed by this message. You know, the thing about that message is it is so profoundly un-American. I mean, it flies in the face. We're about to celebrate next year America's 250th birthday. It flies in the face of every tradition here of not dancing on the graves of your political opponents. People, I mean, in times gone by, presidents who disagreed politically with Rob Reiner and his wife would nonetheless have put out a presidential statement paying tribute to the extraordinary contributions that they made to American society and
they would
American
have meant
life.
it.
Now, all of that.
And they would have meant it.
And they would have meant it, yeah. because they would have been acting in their role not as head of government, but as head of state. Yes. Remember, the American presidency combines the two roles. Now, all of that went out of the window during Trump's first term. The presidential tributes to Americans of note who passed away disappeared. And to be fair about this, Joe Biden never really brought it back. So if you look at the people that Joe Biden paid tribute to, they were invariably people with whom he had an affinity, particularly ideologically and philosophically. So that era has gone. But this is such an egregious, disgraceful, shameful moment for the presidency in terms of that role as head of state, that I think there are hardworking Americans out there, doesn't matter what political party they back, who look at that and they say, you know what, that is profoundly un-American.
Yeah, I mean, to say the very least, it is hideous, almost incomprehensibly hideous. But thank you. Clearly, the position that Reiner adopted and Singer Reiner and Michele adopted was part of the reason why they had collectively burrowed so far under his skin, which I suppose brings us to definitely. The BBC. I don't sense that the BBC have burrowed under his skin anywhere near as much as Rob Reiner did. This lawsuit feels a little more opportunistic, perhaps, than that hideous sort of bilious outburst yesterday.
Yeah, and there's a curiosity about the timing of this lawsuit. It has been over a month since Donald Trump first threatened to sue the BBC. And we're very used to Donald Trump making all sorts of threats to sue all sorts of people, and most of them he doesn't follow through on. So I was thinking last week, maybe this thing has gone away. Maybe the lawyers spent more than a month trying to figure out if they had any legal justification for bringing this lawsuit whatsoever, even, especially in the Sunshine State of Florida. And then suddenly yesterday, and it was out of the blue at the White House after some event in which he pinned medals on people from his border force for doing all sorts of brave things, apparently, in keeping immigrants out of the country. Yeah. After that, suddenly he went off on a riff and told us that the lawsuit was imminent. Let's take a listen to what he said yesterday in the Oval Office.
In a little while, you'll be seeing I'm suing the BBC for putting words in my mouth, literally. They put words in my mouth. They had me saying things that I never said coming out. I guess they used AI or something. So we'll be bringing that lawsuit. A lot of people are asking, when are you bringing that lawsuit? Even the media can't believe that one. They actually put terrible words in my mouth having to do with January 6th that I didn't say. And the beautiful words that I said, right? The beautiful words, talking about patriotism and all of the good things that I said, they didn't say that, but they put terrible words. They actually have me speaking with words that I never said, and they got caught because I believe somebody at BBC said, this is so bad, it has to be reported. That's called fake news. So we'll be filing that suit probably this afternoon or tomorrow morning.
And then, of course, late last night, that lawsuit drops and it's been filed in the Southern Division of the U.S. District Court in Miami. And if you read all 33 pages of it, I think that there will be many legal analysts who think that it is very thin legal gruel. I mean, he's suing the BBC, demanding $5 billion for defamation and $5 billion for breaching the Florida Deceptive Trading Practices Act. The lawsuit is unable to identify a single viewer in Florida who watched the documentary, complained about it, and then changed their vote as a result of viewing it. Instead, if you read the lawsuit, the BBC is presented, who knew, as this broadcasting powerhouse in Florida, with its content available to millions of Floridians whom apparently it influenced. Buried in this lawsuit is the evidence of the president's star witness, no less an authority. This is the wording of the lawsuit, than former Prime Minister Liz Truss.
This changes everything.
According to the... changes everything, right? She discussed the bias, the need to hold the BBC accountable, and the BBC's pattern of actual malice. It complains about the words used by many analysts that were interviewed by the BBC, including the former Labour Secretary Robert Reich, Heather Cox-Richardson, the politics professor at Boston College. It even complains about the fact that it took a clip of the BBC News coverage of Kamala Harris's convention speech in Chicago last year, and it complains about the fact that the sound is brought up of a BBC reporter or presenter saying that the mood in the room as she took to the stage was electric. Now, all of that is going to be completely covered by America's First Amendment, which guarantees freedom of speech. And notably, this lawsuit doesn't quote any of the myriad Trump supporters who were given free rein during the course of that hour-long documentary to explain why they were backing him for a second term. And as we've noted before, the day after that documentary was transmitted, television critics in the newspapers back there in the UK all hailed it for having avoided the trap of using a sledgehammer to crack a nut and having actually given Trump supporters an opportunity to explain why they wanted him back in the White House. So, look, I mean, I think it's eminently defensible. I know there are calls for him to, on the BBC, to settle this in short order and get rid of it. But I think they've got a real chance. I mean, it may be that the judge simply looks at the complaint, and as a previous judge did with the complaint against the New York Times for $15 billion, just throws the complaint out and says there's no merit to the complaint. But let's see where it goes.
Is it? I mean, listening to him there, I just read the first line because people may not have seen it. This action concerns... I don't know, have you ever been on a pound a word, Simon, when you've been writing for newspapers? or you've been writing an essay?
Not a pound, mate.
Not a pound a word. Well, you've been watching the word count in the top right-hand corner of the screen and just waiting to get over the line so you could go to the pub. That's what this reads like. This action concerns a false, defamatory, deceptive, disparaging, inflammatory and malicious depiction of President Trump. I think they've run out of adjectives. But... again, you've done it again. You've tempted me back into trying to sort of doing the cryptology of Trump. In that clip you played, it sounds like he's not actually quite clear about what he's accusing the BBC of. He sounds as if he thinks it was an AI depiction of him saying words that he never said, where it is, and actually in the writ, they don't put the correct edit in. They remove quite a large chunk that appears between the two clips that were spliced together by the BBC. So again, that would undermine a case you'd imagine in a normal law court. But he doesn't seem to understand what he's accusing the BBC of in that clip.
Yeah, we should be absolutely clear. There is no connectivity between what Donald Trump said in the Oval Office yesterday and what the lawsuit alleges. I mean, we know whether he knows it or not, we know the BBC did not put words into his mouth. They took two parts of the speech, jammed them together inappropriately and didn't disclose to the audience that that's what they'd done. They certainly didn't use, as he keeps inferring, and he's done this on numerous occasions, they certainly didn't use AI literally to put words into his mouth. And the lawsuit doesn't assert that at all. So those claims are not being advanced legally. And the lawsuit, I mean, you know, this thing runs 33 pages. When the judge down in Florida, a Republican appointee, dismissed the complaint against the New York Times, he made the point that when you bring these defamation lawsuits, the complaints themselves are required to be short, to the point, and very, very clearly identify why the alleged crime aggrieved someone in the jurisdiction in which the alleged behaviour took place. This is another one of these lengthy, bilious legal documents that chucks everything, including the kitchen sink, into the language, refers to Donald Trump's brand as one of the world's great business leaders. You know, the courts have previously shown in Florida they don't have any truck with that kind of stuff, and it may well be that on this occasion they don't have much truck with this if they choose to go forward to a trial. As I say, so much of the BBC's alleged conduct, alleged misconduct, looks at first glance as though it's entirely covered by the First Amendment, that they've got the opportunity, I think, to put up a very vigorous defence. And, by the way, so does the British government, if the British government chooses to say to Donald Trump, get your mitts off my public broadcaster.
I mean, they could even countersue, but that would be too much to wish for.
Yes, they could.
As indeed would.
Well, they could definitely.
Yeah, an appearance from Liz Truss in the witness box I would actually put on pay-per-view, I think, Simon.